Good day, Industrial Advisor listeners, and thank you for tuning in. If you have not subscribed, please do so by clicking subscribe wherever you podcast. Click the like button and hit the bell if you want notifications of when we put up new content. Leave us a comment about anything we discuss here today or general comments about the show. Now, let's get into it.
All right, welcome to our Industrial Advisors podcast. You have Bill Condon and Matt McGregor. We are in Boise, Idaho at the IAMC conference, and we have a great guest today. We have Ty Morris with Pure Development. He's been a principal at Pure for a number of years now, and Ty is one of our favorite guys in the industry, so it's awesome at this conference. Yeah, we love you, man. Yeah. So it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us again. I think we did this last year.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
You were so good that we invited you back.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It's big shoes to fill.
So here we go.
I'm going to be asking the questions today,
there we go.
Everybody. So this is the Ty Morris Show. And
Let's
welcome.
roll. Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about personal life. How's that going? What do you got going on with your hobbies?
Yeah. Well, you two know, but everyone else may not know. I have two kids.
Yep.
2 under 4. So it's live fire action every day. We just keep
sure.
our hands up and make sure that the blows come in at an angle, not straight on. But it's great. We've been in Denver, Colorado now for the last 2 years. It's been an awesome shift for the family. Great lifestyle adjustment, and allows me to service our clients a little more directly, even though Denver is a little bit further west.
From Indianapolis.
Yep. Where my team is based for the most part. Even though we're further west, more direct flights, bigger airport, just makes the connections a little less strenuous, right? A little easier to travel. And with kids, that's important.
Yeah.
So, no, everything is
going. I take Denver over Indy. Sorry. Sorry to the Indy fans out there.
So would I.
Yeah, so would I, honestly. No, it's a good place to live. We're very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And tell us what's going on in Pure Development. How's the year? What's going on? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah. Well, as a firm, I'm really excited about where we are.
Great.
So take a step back to where we were yesterday. When I joined the firm, I was member 5, principal number 4 at the firm, and that was 5.5 years ago, and now we're 30 plus. So, there are firms out there where 30 plus doesn't sound like a big number, but for us, when you're looking at growth and what that means for a team, it's a big growth trajectory on a relative basis for us as a firm.
Wow.
And I think that's really exciting. It's exciting because we have a lot of talent on the team with a diversified skill set. We've hired within the real estate industry, but we've also hired, like myself, I didn't come directly from real estate, outside of the industry to get different skill sets. And that hiring people from outside of your industry, I think, does a couple of things. Challenges your internal way of thinking, but it also sheds light on a different angle of how we've thought about the business as a whole for a long time. So, for instance, we hired a guy that used to work on the public sector, municipality based there in Indianapolis, very locally connected, but super service oriented in terms of his mindset, where you have transactional real estate guys looking at the transaction on a negotiation basis. He's thinking about how do we service the person on the other side of the table, which seems like a small nuance, but a really important one for the diversification of our team. The other thing that's exciting about our group is, I know we'll talk a lot about industrial. That'll be a topic that you guys want to hit on, but our firm is diversified just like you guys are in terms of where we get revenue sources and the different business lines within our model. So we have not only our industrial build-to-suit, we do build-to-suits for other sectors like pharma and office as well. We have our industrial spec arm, which is just strictly industrial distribution. But then we have an urban adaptive reuse, mixed use component as well. So what's cool about that is we not only have a lot of different areas that the people that work for us in terms of their kind of experience set, but we don't have to rely on a down market in any one subsector the way some of our other competitors do, which I think is a really interesting inflection point going into the next part of this cycle.
I assume with the 30 partners, though, that you are specialized in one area, and if somebody else is a pharma, but you're not touching all of those, or are you touching stuff outside of industrial?
Yeah, I am. So where I focus is on the build-to-suit platform. So I lead tip of the spear, everything build-to-suit within our firm.
Okay.
And then we have some of our other partners that you guys know will focus on development across different platforms. Some will focus on spec and mixed use, but where I primarily focus is on build-to-suit. And then if something comes into the Denver market that needs eyes on it, I could play boots on the ground there in Denver.
Yeah. I mean, that's nice to have the different sectors to be able to to jump in and out.
And it informs decisions
Yeah,
in
for
industrial,
sure. Yes.
right? From a different lens.
Yeah.
Because as you guys know, the groupthink in any industry can be heavy at times. You hear the same things said and thought about on all the podcasts, on all the newsletters. And so to be informed, just slightly informed differently from a different subsector could sometimes offer power in the way you're making decisions or unlock some potential in an area that maybe you wouldn't have been able to had you not had that information.
Good point.
Yeah. Knowledge is power, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's stay on the industrial topic for a minute. A lot's changed in the last year since we last did this podcast. Interest rates are up. There's not as much capital out there.
Yeah.
Where do you see kind of the biggest opportunity second half of this year on the industrial side?
Yeah. So I'll quickly run through 3 different areas that I think are poised, a couple of which we've heard about a lot, and one of which just may be interesting tidbit for people that are outside of our world. The value add existing building space with lower weighted average lease term remaining, those continue to be the types of deals that seem to be transacting with velocity. I'm sure you guys are seeing that as well.
We are,
No doubt.
Yeah. So that's one that I think will continue here for a little while, especially if development and lending on ground up development continues to kind of put a pin in that momentum for a little bit. You're going to need to see some acquisition momentum to continue the market on the investment sales side. From a build-to-suit ground up perspective, where I've noticed an uptick in activity is actually on the net lease buying side. Where we've seen problems over the last 6 to 12 months has been inactivity, broadly speaking, because no one could tell where the terminal rate for the Fed funds is going to be.
Yeah,
right. So no one wants to get caught with their pants down from an investing perspective or the type of leverage they put on products on a short-term basis. However, as we kind of near the peak of that mountain where people think where SOFR is going to top out, you're seeing net lease buyers come in and be really aggressive on 15 to 20 year lease term for credit tenant type build-to-suits.
Yeah.
Because the way that they're looking at it is not for a long-term real estate play. They're looking on it, it's like a bond alternative.
Yeah.
So if they're saying, okay, I can come in and lock in my rate of return on this product and it has a 6 in front of it or a 7 in some cases. And I know I'm going to be a long-term holder, 6, 7, 10 years on this product type.
Safe bet.
What do I care about where SOFR is going to top out over the next 12 to 24 months.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that will continue to be a bigger opportunity here at the end of the year. From a product perspective, I think the biggest opportunity that hasn't been talked about, it was distribution over the last 3-4 years. Manufacturing continues to boom.
Yes.
And there's real data behind it now. I thought for a while, manufacturing was this anecdotal reshoring, post-COVID supply chain fix that people were talking about may happen. Hypothesizing, talking head type stuff, but there's real data now.
Yeah.
I think last year alone, the manufacturing industry added 350,000 jobs. Again, on an absolute basis, that may not seem like a lot, but when you look at that relative to 2022 or 21, that was 100,000 more jobs than were gained in 21. So it's like a 40% increase. But then when you look at 2022 as an aggregate of the amount of jobs added between 2010 in 2022, it's 40% of those jobs. So there's real momentum coming back into the United States. So we're seeing opportunities from people that have benefited from the CHIPS Act. So on the tech side, you're seeing like specialty manufacturers from a chemical perspective. So food grade manufacturers, pharma manufacturers as well. And then you're just seeing a lot of these automotive companies start to switch their play as we move to more of like an EV type thing. So you have the Blue Oval in Memphis. You have some solar manufacturers coming in that have also benefited as well from an ESG perspective. I think that's real and that's here to stay. And it plays, in my opinion, to our specialty, which is born out of build to suit you and focusing on specialty products no matter where it is versus spec development on the industrial side. That's just what our DNA has always been. So we're really leaning in heavy to that space. Yeah,
we're seeing it too, like real firsthand manufacturing requirements up significantly year over year. And to your point, that's great for you guys because, you think build a suit, manufacturers oftentimes need build a suits, right? So that's great to hear for you guys too.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise to me that so much has been coming home because before this trend, we were having a labor crisis. And so it's interesting, but it sounds like a lot of these are much higher wage jobs, right? This is the high end, top end of manufacturing is what you're seeing, it sounds like.
Yeah, but to your point, Matt, I think there's something like 4 million jobs needed in manufacturing before 2030. So we're still going to have a labor conversation surrounding these jobs, but it's the trade-off. It seems to me like from a company's decision perspective, how painful was the supply chain choke or bottleneck that they experienced when China was their only facility? And is it worth taking that risk and worrying about overpaying for labor here in the United States to make sure they have that redundancy in their network, that China plus one, right? And we're seeing a lot of those manufacturers say, yes, we need it.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
You may have already answered this, but if you were to boil it down to two things, what are the two most dynamic things impacting your business right now?
In my opinion, this is my opinion.
Which is
that's
always
why you're
right.
here.
Yeah.
Not
always.
not Pure's opinion, partner. So,
okay.
but
separation.
Tyler Moore's hot take,
Yeah.
but I think they would agree. Leverage.
Yep.
Okay. Leverage.
Sure.
And from my world, it's corporate decision making.
Yeah.
Are you saying
Expand
the
on that.
cost of leverage?
Yeah. So leverage being when you looked at where you could get not only the rate of the debt that you would place on a build-to-suit, but the type of leverage you could get. You could get 80, 85, 90, 95% in some cases, depending on the credit of that tenant. It allowed for a lot of flexibility on how you slice and dice that capital stack to execute for the client.
That's right.
Right? Regional banks, the SVB crisis that happened and that unwind by the government, the upcoming regulation that regional banks will have on them, as well as regional banks just being over their skis as far as ground up development, has limited the amount of leverage that they're willing to put on projects from a spec perspective, but also a build-to-suit perspective. So that limits what you can do from a capital stack. That's why I think these net lease buyers are seeing that as an opportunity, and they're coming in and saying, yeah, developers need us right now.
Yeah.
Because on a $100 million build-to-suit, if the leverage is 70%, they don't want to tie up $30 million of equity. So we can come in and play bank, fund the entire construction, take them out of completion. Maybe there's not that developer spread they're used to getting, but they're willing to do it in today's market. So, but that is a chokehold. Now, what that leaves an opportunity for, though, are for some other alternative lenders to step into the shoes of where a regional bank would typically play, like a life insurance company. There's lending groups within those life insurance companies that really like certain product types in certain markets with certain tenants. And they're still offering leverage and great rates up to the 85, 90%. You just have to be creative to find them. But that's definitely something that's impacted. And then on the corporate real estate side for like decision-making with clients, I get it. We are in a super volatile time. I think we're in a risk-off, broadly speaking, environment where people aren't getting paid to take big chances with real estate decisions. And so you're seeing smaller renewals, you're seeing kick the can down the field with capital expenditures, unless they absolutely need something mission critical for their organization and operations. But what I've noticed, guys, is like you're in a build-to-suit process, and a build-to-suit process that would typically take 3 months is taking 5 months. And the amount of people you're interacting with on the client side went from 5 people to 10 people that need to sign off on the deal.
Yeah.
And sometimes the agreements that need to get signed off are sent overseas to where something would have been under 50 million would have been able to be signed off here in the United States with whatever the head of the North American market was or the head of real estate. Now it's anything above 30 million needs to go to the parent, and the parent needs to sign it. So for us, what that means, okay, how does it impact our business? It's about cash flow. So if we're deploying equity into build-to-suits and we have in our mind what a typical timeline for parking that equity looks like before we get it to return to us in the form of either developer profit, should we exit, or in terms of income, should we hold? And that timeline is stretched from 12 to 24 months. We need to be thinking a little clearer about what our cash position is internally and how we're deploying that to take advantage of opportunities, right? Because I do think you're going to go into 24 and there will be opportunities. I think there will be a little more carnage. I think there will be a little more people that have come out and say, I was too overextended here. And you want to have some dry powder, as we all know, when things get a little rougher than they are now. So that's the way that we're trying to think about it.
Yeah. Well, and that's also, you talk about the net lease opportunity. Those buildings that were 4 caps a year ago, right, are now 6.5. And so that brings more interest with a lot more groups coming out looking at those
1,000%.
those deals as well.
Yeah.
Your spec business that you guys, have you guys shifted your strategy at all in the last 12 months with where interest rates have gone, where the economy has gone? There's been some groups that have just said, we're not going to build spec until things get a little bit better.
Yeah.
Have you guys changed strategy on that front at all?
So Adam Sager on our team runs that spec business, tip of the spear. he, myself, and Brian Palmer kind of overlap a little bit with the Venn diagram approach,
Yeah.
but you'll find him a lot in the spec side. What I think was a little fortuitous about the way that he approached spec and the way that he kind of pitched it to our team when we launched it was we weren't trying to go into core gateway markets and go fisticuffs toe to toe with some of the biggest boys in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, our size, but also just looking at it from a high level perspective, we tried not to follow where all the noise was and saying we needed to put up a 1,000,000 footer in Savannah
Yeah.
Right.
because everybody else was putting up a 1,000,000 footer in Savannah. And we're all seeing how that's playing out.
Right.
So the way that we tried to think about it was be very thoughtful about where are the macro trends pushing tomorrow's demand, not today's demand,
Mhm.
tomorrow's demand, and how do we position for that? So he's big in Charleston. His wife is from Charleston. He understands that market. So we started to take a baby foothold in Charleston. It's like a baby Savannah.
Yeah.
Similar market dynamics, municipalities investing a ton in the port, but it's for the future, right? It
Smaller
doesn't-
buildings.
Yeah, we have a small building, but we have an 800 going up
Okay.
there as well.
Yeah.
And then a couple of like in the middle, kind of bite size
Yeah.
between 2 and 500. But okay, what could we learn from Charleston? Well, you had the supply chain issues that have happened, the growing port, land constrained,
Mm-hmm.
growing rent, vacancies low. How do we overlay that into other areas of the country? So what we've done is we've gone to Reno, Nevada, very similar.
Yep.
If you guys track that from a national perspective, as I know you do,
Yeah.
low vacancy,
1%.
amazing rental growth.
Yep.
When you look at it from a map, from a 30,000 foot view, it looks like you could build forever, but you can't
Yeah.
because
Right.
a lot of it's government owned,
Yeah.
and the stuff that's not is like building on the moon. It's like
Yeah.
a crater, right?
Right.
It has 30% grade across the site, and that's just not going to work from penciling a deal perspective.
Right.
That's Reno. Where else could you take it? Laredo, Texas. Why Laredo? Well, from Laredo, Texas perspective, they have a couple of bridges coming across that Mexican border. China +1, a lot of manufacturing is going to Mexico.
For sure.
And guess what? When relative to Charleston, Savannah, SeaTac, Long Beach, when you look at the imports and exports and drayage coming across it's like truckloads coming across that borderline. It's like the third busiest inland port in the country behind those coastal markets,
Right.
which people don't understand, and they have zero product. So it's like, where could we pay attention to the macro trends that even if we miss from an individual deal perspective, we're still going to win.
Yeah.
It may not just be as big, but there's still backdrop to support the decision to build there. And that's where we're
Great-
focusing.
Great point.
Yeah.
That market.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm curious because you do so many build-to-suits. We're not seeing a lot of innovation on the green initiatives or, much for spec tech, EV, anything on speculative buildings. Are you seeing anything cool on the build-to-suit stuff?
Yeah. A lot of companies are making the decision around labor and how much automation that they're putting in the building.
Mhm.
A lot of companies are also looking for pricing alternatives, which my partner Brian Palmer would tell you is we run different scenario planning on, do you want solar panels on the roof?
Mhm.
Do you want conduit for EV charging put in place, even if you don't need those charging stations today?
Yep.
So we're seeing that a lot. As you guys know, on the spec perspective, the developer's decision is every incremental cost that's not contributing to the rent that you're going to charge takes away from your profit return.
Yes.
Right.
They're not going to get paid for it. They're
Exactly.
flipping it.
So the question then becomes, like, parking ratios was a big deal. I don't know, adding more parking a big deal 3-4 years ago. People were trying to monetize, like, how do you get paid for that extra parking? It's extra cost, but what's the actual value? I think all that will play out. But I think the best buildings, in my estimation, it's less important to have the best profit for the tenant leases your building. It's just important to have a tenant.
Yeah.
So the more optionality that you can give them in this market, especially the best tenants with the best credit, which really matters right now on a spec building, if you can lease to a credit tenant versus a non-credit tenant,
Huge.
it's humongous in terms of the exit. And you can't really monetize that. A 10 basis point compression on the exit you get on a spec building can more than take away any damage done by adding an EV charging station, et cetera.
Right.
So
Yep.
in my mind, it's like, okay, we're trying to pay attention to those trends and add them pragmatically where it makes sense, but add them for the future because people are going to want that.
That's right. Tyler, what's your predictions on the industrial side for 2024?
Oh my gosh, you guys ready for this?
Yes.
That's why they brought me on the show, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many other smarter, greater people that you could ask this question of. But I do think that it seems for all the talk of the pain that we should have felt from a recession, there's no recession from my perspective. Now, the data may show something differently, but we still have a tight employment market.
Yeah.
You still have consumer spending, whether that's due to government stimulus or not. The supply chain for the automotive space has kind of buoyed car prices, right? Where you usually see those decrease in a recessionary environment. I think capital expenditures, like CapEx spending for the companies that we all work with, has continued just because, especially on the office side, if people have been trying to drive people back into the office, they've been trying to redevelop and innovate either with new leases at a higher rate or reinvest in furniture or new settings. So I think all of that has kind of overlaid this smoother topping to what I think is a rough undercurrent of what's really going on once some of those things subside. So if you were to ask me, and there's two camps, do we go into a soft landing or do we land a little bit harder? Do we have a recession? Do we not? I think that there's going to be a bigger slowdown that comes beginning of next year-ish. And I don't necessarily think that's a super terrible thing, but I do think that there's a little bit more pain that's going to be felt. And you're starting to see, you guys, this is not an office podcast, but for anyone listening, like The Real Deal, I follow them on Instagram and some other places. They have some really nice articles on what's happening in the office market.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see it. The Aon Tower in Chicago, they just said that lost 47% of its value on its mark-to-market adjustment. So like, I think you will continue to see some of those things happen in the market, and next year might hurt a little bit before it gets better.
Yeah, even in New York, you look at, I saw some sort of article that was done, and a lot of those downtown high-rises in Midtown are owned by lenders right now. So those core, San Francisco's another one. I just saw an office building trade in that market, really low price per square foot compared to historical numbers for that market. So the office market's interesting.
For sure. Same question to you guys. What do you guys see?
Yeah, I think your point earlier that you made about companies are just being a little more cautious about things. So I think we're, on the industrial side, we're going to see some more renewals than normal, right? Those 3PLs that in the past would go take an extra 50,000 square feet because they knew they were going to go fill it.
Right.
They are not doing that right now, right? They're taking the space that they need, and they'll figure out if they need to grow later. So I think things are going to just kind of be status quo for a while on the leasing side. Capital markets, we've had a historically low volume on the capital market side. So I would expect that to increase a little bit. But I think cap rates are still going to kind of hover around where they are right now.
And is your mindset with the cap rates hovering as well as activity, are you in the camp where the Fed has to decide where they're going to put the rate before that starts to loosen up? Are you in that camp?
I am. And I think once that happens, like we've seen it before,
I agree.
right? Then the capital comes back in a big way.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And the only other thing I'll throw out there, the reason why I don't think we're going to have too big of a slide is, unlike the last recession, we had way too much construction going on. I don't feel like we do, because the interest rates kind of slowly just started going up, changing the construction financing and having developers pulling back on that spec stuff.
1,000%.
Right. So we're not going to have this huge surge of product at the same time a pullback of tenants. Of course, we're seeing the vacancy go up, but I just don't think we're going to have massive spikes because of that.
Yeah. And maybe it's not related to the industrial space, right, on the recession front. I'm just thinking broadly for the consumer and some other areas of the economy that are maybe a little more cyclical, but aren't as insulated. Maybe they hurt a little bit. But to your point, I agree with everything you just said. Yeah,
I mean, the big question mark is, an office. How is that going to come back? Is it going to come back? I mean, we're seeing office buildings in core cities trading at less than industrial buildings per square foot, which is unbelievable.
It's insane.
I heard a comp the other day. One was sold for like $230 a foot that was valued at $900 2 years ago. So, I mean, but when you're facing 40-50% vacancy, who wants the keys? So that's a tough equation.
Yeah, I mean, some of these tech companies, as we know, the big ones are requiring people to go back to work, right? And so that should help that market, the office world.
Yeah, one would hope.
Yeah. But I got a really important question for you. For you guys that don't know, Ty was a 3-year captain on the basketball team at Boston University.
Uh-oh, where are we going with this?
Can you still dunk?
Oh,
well, first of all, could you dunk? I mean, you look, very athletic, so I'm sure you could dunk back then. Can you still dunk?
If I get, no.
He could dunk.
Probably
Really?
not. I don't know. I haven't tried in about 3 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing that you haven't tried.
But yeah, I actually haven't played basketball. Funny story. I broke my nose 2 consecutive years. And my wife kind of looked at me after the second one, was like,
yeah,
he had enough.
Really?
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do now? Yeah.
And you strike me as a guy, like, gets the ball, you're picking him up full court, dogging him up
That's
and down
right.
the court. Yeah.
That's why when guys start playing with elbows out, this gets
that's-
messed
yeah,
up a
that's
little
right.
bit, right?
That's right.
But that's part of the game. But,
Okay.
yeah.
So as long as we're on the sports, I'll ask you two more questions. What do you think what's going on in Boulder with primetime?
Mm-hmm.
You like that?
Who doesn't like that?
Yeah. It's good for college. It's good.
If you don't like that,
Right?
I mean,
It's so much fun.
yeah, it just goes to show, like, here's the thing about leadership. Everybody talks about leadership, and they know how important it is intellectually.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is a manifestation of what it actually means.
Yeah.
You could tell that it emanates from every single player that talks about the program. They're talking as if they are him.
Yeah.
And
It's awesome.
it gives me chills thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because you want to just play for a guy like that.
Did you see his pregame speech before game one?
Yes.
So
Oh my
good.
gosh.
So good.
Play my theme music.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put on my theme music.
Play my
Wasn't
theme
that
music.
great?
I'm like,
I mean,
Yeah.
I want to run through a wall right
Seriously?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean the belief.
I hate to
belief that
admit
the
this,
guys
but
has.
this weekend I watched that game over my alumni, and UW's undefeated.
Yeah.
But I wanted to watch that game.
And he said he has this. I send it to my to Adam Sager on my team all the time because I'm a big Prime guy now. Because you
Yeah.
have to be because I live 35 minutes south.
Yeah.
But it was like 2 weeks before his opener. He was giving an interview with the press, and he's talking to them about why should I worry about what you guys think of me?
I saw
Yeah.
that.
You didn't
Yeah.
make me,
Right.
right?
Yeah. You
Like,
can't break me.
you can't break me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't make me, so you can't break me.
Yeah.
I've been that guy.
Yeah.
And I just think that type of self-confidence, however it emanates, and it's
Mhm.
supernatural with him. Not everybody could pull it off in his
Right.
way.
Sure.
But man, if all of us just believed in ourselves the way that he
Right.
believes in
Yeah.
himself, what we could go and accomplish, it'd
Yeah.
be insane.
Yeah.
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 And so I'm long Deion Sanders. I'm
That's
long
right.
Colorado Buffs. Let's
Yeah.
I mean-
Okay, last question, Bill. You got to be quiet on this one. Bill's been a little distraught about the Seahawk game, and there was a little
I like how
pickup
they opened.
that went to Denver from Seattle last year, and I know you're probably an Indy fan, but question: Denver Broncos or Seahawks have a better record this year?
go. Ooh. I mean, I can't say the Seahawks. I'm sorry, Bill.
$100 bet?
$100. I'll do $100
Yeah.
bet.
All right.
there we
fair.
go.
Yeah.
There
I
we
got the
go.
Hawks. You got the Broncos.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love
Let's
it.
do something better. Let's do dinner.
That's what I was about to
Yeah,
say.
let's do
As long
dinner.
as the $100 goes.
Gambling's
towards dinner.
illegal anyway. So, like, yeah.
He didn't mean it.
Yeah, I
folks.
was
He
just
didn't.
kidding. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Tyler, you're awesome, man. So
Oh, man.
insightful as always.
Yeah.
Good friend
Lots
of ours.
fun.
Great
friend.
to have you on, man. Thank
That's
you.
what makes this special. Thank
yeah.
you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks a
appreciate
lot.
it. Yeah.
All right.